Welcome to Next Game's Voracious Resurgence series. This video covering the new RoE objectives of Peculiar NMs 1 through 5. Now we'll start off by giving a brief explanation of exactly what these Peculiar NMs are and what they reward you with, and then I'll go into a battle example of each of them, showing you exactly what to expect when you take these NMs on. First, let's go ahead and talk about the Voracious Resurgence missions and what we've seen thus far. So far there have been 23 separate missions. Almost all of them have been fights, 19 total out of those 23. Now in the first 18 missions, there's really no risk whatsoever to most endgame players being able to take on this content. However, starting with 118, it will grant you access to the RoE Peculiar Foes objectives 1, 2, and 3 via Elijah in Upper Juno. Now these fights do add a little bit of challenge that has not existed previously in this series, so I thought it would be good to make some videos on them and also make some videos on how to get to these locations, because some of these locations are in some hard to get to areas. Now the new missions just granted this week now give us access to 2 additional Peculiar Foes. That is through mission 1-23. This will give us access to foes 4 and 5 via that same NPC of Elijah in Upper Juno. Now all 5 of these Peculiar Foes missions are monthly objectives that will each reward you with a silver voucher that you can use for Mars or Venus orbs. So basically this has now given us a way to get an additional 5 vouchers, almost an entire Mars orb, each month. Now up until now, the mission fights have not been challenging in any way for an endgame player. However, starting with mission 1-21, which just came out this last week, we do start introducing some challenge to these fights, so I thought I'd at least show you what you were going to expect as you took them on. Up there in the upper right hand corner, you're going to see mission 1-21. Now in this mission, you're going to be taking on 4 separate NMs at the same time, so things like sleep can definitely help you out here. The first is Drakeweaver Hugel, who is a paladin. The next is Riftweaver Pomal, which is a blue mage. Fistweaver Mufal is a monk, and Glyphweaver Sikol is a black mage. Now the order I chose to take these out in is the Glyphweaver or the black mage first, followed by the Fistweaver or monk, then followed by the Riftweaver, the blue mage, and then finishing lastly with the Drakeweaver, the paladin. If at all possible, try and being a sleeper for this to try and sleep some of these mobs while you're taking on the one that you're focusing on. Now let's move on to mission 1-22, which is in the lower right hand corner. Now in this fight, you're actually going to take on 6 mobs at the same time, so the challenge is going to be stepped up even more. You'll be going against 2 Lamia, 2 Quidrub, and 2 Sagahin. Now it's entirely up to you which order you take these out in, but I would normally suggest taking out the Lamia first, then taking out the Quidrubs, and then finishing with the Jadivers. This allows you to be able to sleep the Jadivers if you are capable of doing so, and therefore owing having to deal with 3 or 4 of the NMs at a time. One thing I will speak to is it is difficult to get to this location that 1-22 is taking place at, and you need to go to this location several times in mission 1-22 and 1-23. The easiest and quickest way to get here is to use the survival book warp to Kedarva Mire. Here you will be able to immediately turn around and zone right into the Arpago Reef, which is where you will be very close to being able to pop this set of NMs. Now this brings us to 1-23, the final one that will give you access to the Peculiar Foes 4 and 5. Now that fight is going to be in the upper right hand corner there and is the easiest of the 3 as it's against only a single foe. Truthfully, the hardest part with this last fight is simply getting this NM to pop. You'll need to head to Al-Zadal Undersea Ruins and equip the Thunder Hammer that you got as a reward in a previous mission. You will then need to go around killing Kukurin until you actually have this particular NM spawn. Now once he is spawned, it really is a rather trivial fight. Just make sure you go ahead and keep shadows up or whatever form of damage mitigation you have, and then just go ahead and spam all your damage. It's important to note you do not need to keep the Thunder Hammer equipped, so you can go ahead and switch back to your main weapon and finish up the fight. Okay, now that we've finished kind of how to get access to all 5 of these Peculiar NMs, let's go ahead and take a look at battle examples of each. Here we are at the Peculiar NM1, which ends up being a Morid. Now, the most difficult part about this one is simply getting here. It's at a very southern port of Wojam Woodlands. The quickest way to get here, I find, is to simply Unity Warp to Wojam Woodlands and then head south to get to this location. Now the first time I took this one on, I went ahead and did it with Ninja and full trust, and the fight really went rather quickly, so I thought I'd go ahead and show a different perspective of a red mage not using any trust, just to kind of give you a complete idea of what you'll encounter during this fight. I'll go ahead and show you the rest of this battle example, and we'll talk again during the Peculiar NM number 2. Here we are, Peculiar NM number 2, which is a Flan type mob. Now I find this is the most challenging NM to get to, and it just takes the most time, usually about 5 minutes. In order to get here, you have to start at the Halvung staging ground, then go through the gates of Halvung and follow that green path that you see there in your upper right hand corner, finally ending up at the southern end of Mount Zalm, where you can pop this NM. Now this Flan overall has the normal Flan abilities. I have not noticed many problems when taking him on. His spells don't hit for that hard, and things like amorphic spikes also don't hit for that hard. However, I am fairly well geared in this instance, so don't underestimate it if you are just someone that is new to endgame. Otherwise, you should be able to fairly easily get past this and earn your silver voucher. That's going to be all I have to say for this second Peculiar NM. Go ahead and enjoy the rest of this battle example. We'll talk again at the third. This brings us to the third NM, the Awoken Vampire Jarl, which is definitely the most challenging yet. First, let's talk with how to get here. You want to use the Unity NPC warp to Kardarva Mire, and then simply head north, hugging the right wall, and you will end up running right into the spawn location. Now when taking on this NM, you will notice I've gone ahead and summoned my trust again. That's because the first time I took this one on, it was only my trust that ended up saving me because this NM can use Doom multiple times during the run. In my first run with Ninja, he ended up taking out all of my trust. However, fortunately my trust were able to remove Doom from me before I perished. Now obviously you can simply bring Holy Waters to deal with this. However, I went ahead and just summoned some trust and did not see that move used in this second attempt. That being said, definitely you want to be ready for it at all times. Now other than that Doom AoE ability, this fight is not that challenging and it should go faster than the others. Next, let's move on to the Peculiar NMs 4 and 5, which were just released in the update this last week. Now here we are at the 4th Peculiar NM, the Chimera. Now the quickest way I find to get to this particular spawn point is to use the Unity Warp to Fei Yin, then quickly exit the zone once you've been warped there, and this one is just a short distance up the ramp that is near you. Now this one definitely takes longer to finish off than all of the other NMs we've taken on so far combined. That's mainly due to the uses of Fulmination and all of these stun abilities that can be used during this run. Now I went ahead and summoned my trust because I didn't really know what to expect, and I'm kind of glad I did, as there is actually a lot more going on in this fight than the previous 3 NMs put together. That being said, as long as you're used to dealing with fighting this type of mob, this fight should not pose much of a challenge for you. I definitely recommend making sure you have a trust tank. Therefore, if an AoE stun does go off and you happen to be stunned for a period of time, you're not the one taking all of the damage while you're waiting for your trust to become unstunned. Let's go ahead and see how the rest of this battle example goes, and I'll see you again for the 5th and final Peculiar NM. This brings us to the 5th and final Peculiar NM that is out at this time, and you can find this one in Palborough Mines. Now the quickest way I find to get here is to simply use your home point warp to Palborough Mines, and then it's just simply a short hike if you follow that green line in the upper right hand corner to get to the spawn location for this NM. Now I found this one easier than the Peculiar NM number 4, but it's definitely much more challenging than 1, 2, and 3, so do not underestimate it, and I do suggest trust. Now this NM is a Pirogo who has access to all of those usual frog attacks, However, I didn't find any of them to be damaging at all during this run, so overall you shouldn't have too many problems with this one, especially if you summon some trust as I have done here. I definitely recommend a strong tank trust so that you can concentrate on getting your damage in. That should be all I need to share for these peculiar NMs. Go ahead and enjoy the rest of this battle example, and we'll talk again at the end of the video. That's going to be it for how to take on all 5 of the peculiar NM. I hope you found that helpful and informative. I'll be sure to release future videos as the Voracious Resurgence nears its end. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Stay safe and stay healthy out there.